Hey, Jiamiao. Welcome to
Hi.
the podcast.
Hi, Fabian. Nice to talk to you.
No, thank you so much for taking a few minutes for this. Before we delve into the topic of today, which of course are generally AI in the context of the automotive industry, let's learn a little bit more about yourself first, if that's okay.
Yeah, yeah, sure. My name is Jiamiao Li, and I'm originally from China, but I've been in France since 2010. And I'm always in automotive industry since I graduated from the university. So that means I worked for more than 17 years in automotive industry, but in different domains. So that means at the beginning I was mainly an engineer in the domain of after treatment, product design, and then calibrations for vehicle diagnostics and safety. And then I moved to regulation part, regulation and compliance part. So mostly in the electric vehicle regulation and compliance. So including the electric consumptions, the charging, and also electric vehicle safeties. And then since 2010, I moved to the topic of the connected vehicles. And then since this year, I moved to moved to yeah moved to a artificial intelligence compliance for automotive industry. Yeah, and now actually I work in a big company in Europe, which is called Stellantis.
Very good. Let's maybe start there. What are some of the use cases, as far as you can, of course, talk about it, as relates to AI work, that you've been involved in?
Yeah, but if we talk more largely or more widely AI applications, so we have several use cases on in the automotive industry, but actually they are not really new because in some kind of works we have already implemented a kind of neural network or machine learning in our R&D process, especially for the simulations, for the vehicle design and validation process. We have this kind of tools already. But with the generation that we use largely AI technology, so it has been evaluated a little bit to get faster with the calculation powers, and also more and more applications. These are new applications in Gen AI domains. Um, so that means we have, for example, for Gen AI applications, we have more like virtual assistants based on the large language models. And so that means for daily works of automotive industry, like I think like other big companies or small companies, we have a kind of virtual assistant, a copilot to help our daily work. And also we have specific assistants, which is kind of knowledge assistants. This kind of database actually they are has been used a rect approach. That means we put our knowledge in the specific automotive industry into the model training, and the model is capable to answer the specific question in engineering for automotive use cases. And also, other use case is kind of code script generation. So that means as we are more and more, we have more and more software-defined vehicles. That means we have the need to get the software well written and the different ECUs work good together to realize certain functions on the vehicles. In this case, we begin to use Gen AI to create this kind of code and script to create, for example, the fast software and calibration generations at the beginning for the prototype phase. And then also we can do a kind of fast iteration with the tool of Gen AI also, based on the data collection of the fleet tests on the vehicle using this kind of software. They can give faster feedback and data collections and can be analyzed by AI tool and to give better and faster suggestions for software improvements. And also, yeah, that's the most the case that we have already in use today.
Very good. What were, first of all, thank you so much for the overview. I think is we see sort of reasonably similar use cases across sort of
Mhm.
most manufacturers out there at the moment. What were some of the lessons learned from your perspective in terms of things that went well, things that you would do differently in the future, and generally sort of an outlook on what's next with some of these and maybe use cases in addition to that?
Yeah, it's a difficult question actually, because maybe you know also because for automotive industry we are not really fast in this kind of digital transition of using new technology of AI. So main work for Gen AI implementation begins this year. And the I think the key retext that I got is that the organization part it should be done at the beginning. For example, I we discovered that, for example, several different departments in the company, like a huge organization like Stellantis, um, we have different people who work on the same topics, but we don't know each other before. So I think the important thing is that we need to have an organization at a high level. So it's the case today, of course, but we have passed several different difficult phases to identify these kind of difficulties. And today, actually, the organization is we have a transversal AI team, and also it's connected and directly reported monthly to the CTO of the group, and all the needs from AI implementation and Gen AI has been grouped together. And also, I have done a benchmark of these different organizations, for example, Schneider Electrics and L'Oreal, for example. All these kind of organizations, they have a centralized, how to say, transversal organization, and they can directly report to the C-suite level management. So, so this kind of organization permits to have a very efficient case studies of the needs, and also they can propose the solutions more transversally to reduce the cost of the implementations. And for example, for a big company, they can have easily more than 100 or 200 use cases and needs that they will need the implementation of AI.
No, thank you. That does make a lot of sense. Sort of linking this to the points you mentioned previously around the use cases that you have or are currently implementing.
Mhm.
How did you identify the use cases, and did you learn anything from that about how to sort of best identify use cases for Gen AI?
Yeah, identify use cases is not difficult. It's just to listen to different people's because they will complain about their pain points of the daily work. So, for example, for regulation side, I know very well. Regulation side, they have a kind of they have many text of regulation text, and they need to transfer it into the technical indications and specifications to be applied to the product design. This phase actually it's very long and complicated phase because the regulation part they don't really know the component designs, and also the component leaders they don't really understand how the way the regulation is written. So there is a gap between both. So, so it's very difficult. So we will, when we listen to them, they say that, oh, I need to feel like this, I need to translate like this way. They are not happy of this because to treat one text, they may need several months to finish the whole work until that it's totally understood by the department, by technical departments. So this kind of things is a pinpoint of these engineers. So we listen to them and we identify which kind of things, which kind of part of the work are repetitive works and are boring works that need to be several times by the same method. For example, which part of the text, which does it mean, how it can be translated. These are kind of repetitive works. So these kind of works, we can identify them and try to see can we propose some solutions with their use case, with their data input and output, and use the model of Gen AI to help them to improve their work. And it's the same process for other works. For example, for the vehicle design, for the fleet management, for example, because we have many data from fleet management, and also even for the customer side, because customer relation side, we have also the needs because they have different calls, for example, from the customers, and it's different. They are different peoples, they have different emotions, and they complain for different parts. But actually, we can have always some rules in these discussions. We can this hints can help us to find exactly which problem are they happy or not. Is what's the severity of the problem? So these kind of tasks also has been identified. So we are checking. I think we have already a very advanced phase for this part to propose fast solutions and to help the after sales customer how to say customer experience teams to better understand what's the problem and how to treat it.
You mentioned a really interesting point around how much of a problem is it, which sort of leads me to the really important conversation around value. So you alluded to there are so many different problems out there. How do you really, I guess, narrow down the ones that you want to go after with a Gen AI solution? Do you have certain thresholds in terms of sort of monetary values you would like to achieve? And how do you create, is there anything sort of different in terms of Gen AI use case as it relates to the sort of business or value case that you create to justify those investments, as these solutions, of course, cost money and time?
Yeah, business value. A business value because actually, I think if coming back to the large, how to say, vehicle development process, um, the most costly is the lead time actually, because actually we have 4 years for vehicle lead time from the beginning the idea and until the end. So actually, this time if this time can be reduced, that means we increase efficiency, we increase maybe the quality at the same time, and also we can reduce the cost related to this. Um, so, um, but I don't think in your question it's really how to say answering your question for a real business case how it brings values. Mm, let me think about. Yeah. Yeah, I think also there are another use case. Maybe this is could be an example of create value, but I'm not sure it's a Gen AI use it because, for example, for the vehicle production and piece production, the component production, actually we need to detect the faults on the pieces. And actually, these faults, if we do it manually, it's difficult to find them, and also it's cost. Each time there are big defaults, it's very costly, and sometimes it can cause the production line to be stopped. So we began to use a kind of computer vision technology to check on the components, to use analyze on photos, and to fast detect any defaults on the piece, on the components, on the product line. And this kind of detection can be immediately feedback to the automation system. So with this kind of improvement with AI technology, it decrease firstly the default and increase all the detection of the default, and especially we win a lot of time because due to thanks to this kind of solutions, because we will have no need to stop and to check again what's the problem come from, and because we have immediately the feedback from this kind of systems, and the managers of the production can be alert at the 1 second or 1 minute, like in 1 minute of what the problem is.
It does make a lot of sense. And a really important aspect of that also seems to be, besides of internal governance, seems to be regulation. Not just GDPR, of course, when we talk about customer data, but also the for manufacturers in Europe or globally operating, but also in Europe, the EU AI Act. I was just wondering what you, from your experience, what the implications of some of these recent developments in regulation are.
Yeah. When we talk about EU AI Act, we have to talk about the Data Act first, because Data Act is before the EU AI Act. And actually, I think the future future is the debate of the war of the data, because f- I think many who works for AI already know that data is the most important thing for a training model for AI. So Data Act actually already, because they are talking about already data space in European level to share all the available data from different industries. And actually this kind of sharing um, at the same time is a good thing. I think it's good for the future of women, because all these data they can bring enormous values with the help of AI. For example, I know that there are someone, a company, a startup working on the future of mobility. They take all these kind of data and also some event data. For example, there is a museum, they have some special show, or a theater, for example, or a football match. They get this kind of information, and also they get the weather forecast, for example, and they use a AI model to predict the traffic flows in big cities. And for example, the traffic of the vehicles, the people, the public transportations, and also the parking necessities. These will help a lot, I think, for the community, for cities, and also for individuals to have a more free mobility experience. But all these are based on data. This is the most important thing. So data acts is a good beginning, I think. But at the same time, it can bring a huge impact for industry like automotive, because today we are the owner of the data, and we are using these data for our internal research usage, and maybe also for fleet management. That is a kind of B2B business, that we monetize some structured data that we collect from vehicles. But when these data they come from automotive industries, that means these data has been already cleaned, treated, structured, and also we detect abnormal or errors in these data. So that means they have a good quality to be used and they are trustable. But if we get a big data space largely shared, we don't know how these data can be shared, how they can be used in which kind of objective. So it can be risky in some levels. This is my personal opinion. And coming back to the EU AI Act, for the moment, they are still in general level, I think, for all industry who are implementing AI. But I've already read some reports from Deloitte who show that today less than half of the companies they have already taken into account of this kind of regulation AI Act. Um, and so for automotive industry, we are at the beginning to think about how it can be implemented in automotive industry based on these kind of different use cases. Because in most of the use case, they are, as I explained, they are most internal process accelerator. So they are not face any final customers of the vehicles. So the harm they can bring are very limited. And so I think it should be good also to leave the freedom to use this kind of technology in these kind of situations of the use cases, to help to improve the efficiency, and especially to stimulate the innovation of automotive industry for this. But at the same time, I totally agree that we need something to make sure that we don't have the same bias that human can have also based on the data and AI models. For example, for example, there is use case for autonomous driving, automatic auto drive, or autonomous driving. These kind of technologies, I think they are safety related because it can create harm on the road. So it's important to ensure that we can manage the security and safety of this functionality, and the vehicle can perform as a correct way on the road, open road. But at the same time, automotive industry, we have already a very heavy list of regulations for, especially for safety aspects. So I think that for the applications for implementation of EU AI Act, we need to check which functions, which requirements has already been covered by traditional automotive industry. Because, for example, we have autonomous driving regulation specifically to ensure the safety of the road safety. So maybe AI acts is not very specific in our use case. Maybe it's better to apply our own regulations. This is my point of view.
No, thank you. So, some really important aspects in there, which leads me very nicely to my final question. Imagine
Yeah.
that you're talking to the chief data and AI officer at one of the large incumbent automotive manufacturers. What would be your top 3 recommendations for him or her to unlock the most value in a safe, secure, sustainable way from Gen AI?
Top, yeah, if three suggestions, I think the first, it's a very famous one. I think think big, start small, and show value fast. Because I think that the AI today, there are many discussions on it, and the return of investment is not clear today how it can bring. So I think it's important to, even for CEO level, to see a fast return and a use case which is really fast feasible, and we can really see rapidly the return of the value that it can bring. This is the first one. And second one, that I think the accurate of this AI technology is very important. So I think the most, if we want that all the employees in the company to use these kind of tools, AI empowered tools, and they need to be trained to how to use them, and to understand why you use them, and also finally to understand the limit of these kind of tools. This is very important because I've seen that many in colleagues, some of them they are really very optimist, some of them very pessimist of this. But I think the AI tool should be at the middle. They can do many things. They can be powerful. They can help us in many daily tasks. But at the end, human beings, we are the controllers. We are the final decision makers. And the third suggestion is that I think at the same time we should think about the environmental and ethical issue that AI can bring to us, because especially for automotive industry, because we are target of zero carbon network and zero carbon target of our automotive industry. But AI, especially Gen AI, creates, I think, 6 or 10 times CO2 emissions than the normal internet research engine. So in this case, that means if we really largely use this kind of technology in our daily work, that means we create at the same time many waste of and energy, the waters, for example, for cooling, and also we create many CO2. But how to manage this kind of impact on environment? I've heard that there are already discussions in European level to have this kind of environmental regulation for AI technologies. But I think we should take into account also for automotive industry how to manage them. Yeah.
No, thank you. Really appreciate your perspective, especially on the last one. It's a really interesting one that actually not many people talk about, the sustainability implications of all of these Gen AI solutions in terms of compute power and also cost associated with that. So I think this is something that we, yeah, will dive a little bit deeper into in the future for sure. But thank you so much, Jiamiao, for taking a few minutes today. Really
Yeah,
appreciate your
it's
time
my
and insight.
pleasure. Thanks a lot, Fabian.